It's 404 BC. You did not see this coming. The long walls of Athens are being torn down, brick by the hands of the enemies of Athens. And you couldn't hear just crying in the air, but you could hear Spartan girls playing flutes. How did this golden age, powerful empire of Athens end up getting dismantled to the tune of some party song? We need to find out how a city of geniuses murdered its own conscience. What happens when the golden age of Athens comes crashing down? Their power is gone. I'm Mr. Hall, and this is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. This is lesson number 36. Did you see this coming? With the smoothie straw authentic flute being played by Spartan girls. Just a few decades from the peak. If you're coming here from lesson 35, you saw amazing architecture. Lesson 34, the golden age of Athens. We've got a lot to cover if Athens is going to crash. You know, we're moving from this hardware of the maps and the walls and the success and strength of Athens and the Delian League. And we're going to shift to the greatness of the software, the ideas, the morals and virtues that are going to come from this classical age. And so with so much success and gold, how does powerful, rich Athens crash? By the end of this episode, we're going to level you up as a classical scholar with this first step. Let's start with all the gold. Athens has so much gold, and that makes sense. Coming from lesson 34, the golden age of Athens, and then all this beautiful architecture in 35, we're now looking up at this amazing work of art, the Parthenon at the top of the Acropolis, an amazing Doric tribute, a thank you to the gods, specifically the goddess Athena. And we've got a big statue. She's made out of gold and ivory. And there's so much gold stored inside of here. But you should switch positions. It's real easy for us to be, all excited about Athens. Athens is the best. That's what everyone gets worked up about. But why don't you try being a Spartan for a second? When's the last time you tried to empathize with the Spartans? Maybe it was that time when Themistocles had come to Sparta to try to distract, to be a diplomat, all the while Athens was building their walls. That was a while ago. Now Sparta looks up at the strength and power of this fortress with all the walls and this temple to Athena with all the gold inside, and that's money in the bank, quite literally now. The Parthenon is a bank. Be a Spartan for a second. How do you feel right now? It's the year 454 BC, when Athens had changed the world forever. And that might sting a little bit to you as a Spartan, because they literally physically moved the Delian League treasury from the neutral island of Delos to the Athenian Acropolis. So you know how much gold is up there. You saw it getting moved. It's literally the treasury. And that technically was the official shift for Athens to be kind of the leader of the league and the alliance into, we are now controlling this empire and we've got you guys. So as time goes on, you're a Spartan. How do you feel when this Parthenon is completed, 438 BC? At its peak, the Athenian reserve had 9,700 talents of silver. And we've said what a talent is. We've said that a talent is 6,000 drachma, right? This sized coin, like the tetradrachm, which is more like 4 drachmas, one single drachma you could earn working in a typical job in a day. And we knew that it cost about 1 talent to operate one of those naval ships in a day. So 1 talent, in theory, is 6,000 days of hard work. You should always wonder, what does that really buy you? So it's difficult to compare to, think about what a $20 bill could buy in today's money. We just use paper. But in concept, the drachma is supposed to be a trusted silver coin that's valuable more than just its silver. The trust, which is really why this $5 bill matters. Okay, I digress because just trying to build up the concept of how ridiculously wealthy Athens had become, because at 438 BC, Parthenon is now housing this massive amount of wealth, 9,700 talents of silver, plus the Temple of Athena Parthenos. The Parthenon is named for Athena Parthenos. This 40-foot tall statue covered in ivory has 40 to 50 talents of gold, removable gold. Interestingly, gold and silver weren't too much different in value back then, very different in today's world. But Pericles, the leader of Athens, told the people they could strip the gold off the goddess if they ever needed the money. Why would they need the money? Why would they need to strip it off? War. The Acropolis getting invaded. Oh, but no, we've got all these walls. Students, classical scholars, this is called imperial hubris. We talk about hubris a lot. It's usually a bad lesson. The idea that you are so powerful, that you're so bold, you're so prideful that even the gods can't mess with you. That even the gods, Athena, could just be used as a bank account. The Parthenon is a bank, and everyone can see how big your bank account is. Think about today's richest people in the world. Because they own stock, we can look at their value all day. It could fluctuate based on the price of a stock. So who is the most wealthy person in the world today? Consider how many enemies they have just because of the size of their wealth. The famous historian Thucydides called it we call it the Thucydides Trap. Sparta looked up at the Parthenon. Sparta looked down at the map. They saw the changing hardware of power, and they became terrified of Athens and constantly reminded with the Parthenon in their face and the size of these huge walls. The broken snake of Greece has been a problem now for a while. It's kind of a snapping snake, and before the first spear is thrown in this war, the coming Peloponnesian War, I would have to say, what would you have done? What do you think is about to happen next? Is Sparta just going to sit there and watch Athens become more powerful? Why do they even have to act? Do you like Athens being fully powerful and in charge? Do you like the Parthenon? Do you like all this gold? Do you wish that nothing would change? Click the like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, do so, because we need to advance to find out what is going to happen in a war. If Athens versus Sparta means unite all these different city-states against each other, and the hubris of Athens may not be able to rescue them even with all that gold. It's 430 BC, and the hardware of Athens is failing in the most terrifying way possible. Now, Pericles, still the leader, Golden Age is fading fast, and to protect people from Sparta, because of this oncoming war, he puts everybody inside the long walls. Now, what happens when you cram tens of thousands of people inside a confined space? They're strong and protecting walls, but it's a great military plan to keep people. That's what the walls are for, but this creates a biological nightmare. If I say plague, what do you typically think? You probably think Black Death, Europe, but it happens throughout history. From time to time, these things come up. And here is not a good time for Athens to have a plague strike the city and become the poison in the veins of that snake that's already breaking apart. And this is not flu, by the way. This is one of those civilization-ending catastrophes. What percent of the people are going to die in a plague like this. In Europe, it was similar. Some cities were way worse, but 25% to 33% of the entire population would be dead in just a few years. And that includes some of your hoplite soldiers, right? 4,400 hoplite soldiers were lost, 300 elite cavalrymen. Thucydides describes the internal fire that consumed these victims, made them so thirsty they threw themselves into the rain tanks just to try to cool down. What is that? The fever. The uncontrolled, your immune system can't deal with this. It's a physical death that's only half of the story, because the plague creates anomia, which is a Greek word for total lawlessness. The sun is just going to cast shadows onto a failing Athens, a crashing Athens, right? This is deep darkness into Athens with this plague. It even kills Pericles in 429 BC after killing his son earlier. So now you have a power vacuum on top of everything else. The snake is not just broken, it's now headless. 429 BC. What do you think is about to happen next? Let's call this next part the violence of the tongue. Because when a leader dies, who steps up? In Athens, new leaders weren't statesmen. The Greek word demagogue. What is a demagogue? A demagogue is a leader who tells the mob exactly what they want to hear in order to get power. Now let's think about that for a second. Where do you see demagogues? Where do you see leaders, influential people tell the mob exactly what they want to hear in order to get power? It's one thing to say just what you want to hear, but if you're trying to get power from it, that is demagoguery. Demagogue. And the most famous demagogue was Cleon. Cleon is called the most violent man in Athens. Thucydides called him that. He's our historian right now. Thucydides in 427 BC is watching Cleon stand before the people, debating about a small city-state way over in the island of Lesbos. Why do we care about one city-state way over, practically on the coast of Anatolia? Cleon is debating about Mytilene. Mytilene, the city-state, Lesbos is in a strategic location. I've sailed right past it myself, leaving Turkey and going through the Greek islands, visiting the Greek islands. It's spectacular. So I'll give you at least one answer. I hate to spoil the ending, but it's so strategic. The waterways, the location, the ports, the trade. But the reason why we're debating this is because this city, Mytilene, had revolted against Athens. What? You can't revolt against Athens. Cleon wanted to execute every single man, enslave every single woman. He argued that mercy was a sign of weakness and that bad laws are better than good ones when no one obeys the good laws. He didn't use logic. He used the shadow, the demagoguery, the fear and the anger of the crowd. His rival, Diodotus, only won this debate by a tiny margin. We're voting. We're having democracy. He actually saved the city from a complete massacre because ships had already set out to go do that. And then a day later, they chased him down and said, hey, don't go kill every man in this city. What do you think is coming next? Do we need a lion to rise up here? If Cleon was the violence of the mob, new character Alcibiades was the corruption of the elite. Is that what you were thinking was coming next? Alcibiades is like a rock star. Beautiful, handsome, rich, brilliant. He had zero self-control. I'll pause for a second. Who can you think of that would take advantage of their good looks, notoriety, popularity, presence, and brilliant strategy? do have to say, if you play any strategy games, card games, chess, things that involve you thinking multiple moves ahead, Alcibiades is a rock star. So we're talking about this new lion, a rock star, like so many students I've had come through class who love strategy games, especially were good at chess. Maybe they were the smartest people in the room. That typically goes together. But what if that person wouldn't stop breaking the rules? That student is Alcibiades. He's actually the student of Socrates. He is a student. He is young. He is the lion's whelp. Let's call him the lion's whelp that Athens could not tame, but he's a lion. He once bought a dog for 90 minas, which is a massive fortune. 360 minas make a talent. That is a massive fortune, and he did it just to cut off the tail of this dog. And there's a painting of this dog, right? Alcibiades is in a lot of arts, so I'm going to keep flashing that art on screen. Alcibiades cutting off the tail of this dog. He wanted the city. Well, oh yeah, let me ask you, why did he do that? He wanted the city. What did he want the city? To talk about the dog's tail. Well, if they're talking about the dog's tail, what are they not talking about? They're not talking about every other crime that Alcibiades is involved in, which I need to tell you, how much trouble he is. In 416 BC, he entered 7 chariots into the Olympic Games just to show off. Alcibiades showing off, and he took 1st place, 2nd place, and 4th place. And using his personal glory, he could trick the city to do what? He's a strategy guy, and he tricks the city into a dangerous war. But by 415 BC, the night before he was supposed to lead a giant army to go to Sicily, where Syracusa is, that's a colony. We've seen colonies over the southern parts of Italy. We've seen colonies in the Ionian areas. Greece has been expanding, right? It's been a golden age. They've been taking their software and installing it in new places. So let's take a giant army to Sicily. But this became a disaster. Across the city, sacred statues called Herms were smashed and vandalized. Now, why would that be? Why would sacred statues of the different gods, these things are Herms, they're like little shrines. People believed that this was a curse, and it was a sign, it was a conspiracy that someone is trying to kill off the democracy. Alcibiades was also accused of mocking the mysteries and the sacred religious rites of the city. Alcibiades is getting pinned. Hubris. Do we say hubris again? This time, Alcibiades fears for his life, and he did the unthinkable thing. What is it? The rock star of Athens defects. What is a defection? What does it mean to defect? He defected. He changed teams. He switched sides. He joined Sparta in the Peloponnesian War, which is all about lining up city-states either on the Sparta team or the Athens team, and now he is taking all of his lion power. He is the head of the Athenian snake, at least in some way, because of his popularity. And he's now moved over to the Spartan body. What would you do if the person you trusted the most joined forces with your worst enemy? The Peloponnesian War has so many details. I approached it this year with the help of Ben Franklin because I tried to go back to American history. When Ben Franklin was warning the colonies, stick together. We've got enough problems with the French and Indians. At that time we were on the British team, but later on, if those colonies weren't so united, they wouldn't have that identity to know that our 13 colonies were different than British, than French. They became a new nation. How do you apply that to where we are with Athens? There are a lot of battles in the Peloponnesian War that go back and forth as Sparta tries to undo what Athens did. And by the year 404 BC, the map was very different. It doesn't look like the Delian League anymore. Athens was literally starving. The fleet was gone. The Spartans were at the gates. The surrender of Athens didn't happen in a silent room. Remember, pan flutes. I assume that's the kind of flute that they were playing at that point. But the great long walls are being torn down. And we've looked out from the high points. We've looked down. I've done it. Like, I've been so excited about these long walls, seeing them when I visit Athens every single time, because you can see down to this flatter area, down to the port of Piraeus, and how it's like a grid city because they had brought city planners. It's a very strategic location, and it shows you the strength of the old software, the plans that Themistocles and his successors had, and now we're tearing them down to Spartan flute girls. Music. The Spartans wanted to turn the destruction of this empire into a party. What kind of party would this compare to? After this party gets launched, Sparta installs a group of 30 men to rule the city, and they are called the 30 Tyrants. 30 tyrants are now ruling Athens. Doesn't sound like a democracy anymore. Led by a man named Critias, these tyrants were a nightmare because in 8 months, they executed 1,500 Athenians. That's about 5%. And they weren't just killing criminals. They were killing anyone who was rich enough or smart enough to go against the politics of Sparta, the politics of the 30 tyrants, the oligarchy that was installed. Does this sound like the French Revolution to you a little bit? The broken snake is now eating itself in a reign of terror. It does sound like the French Revolution. But there's an interesting difference, an important difference from the French Revolution. A moderate man named Theramenes tried to stop the killing, the violence. But Critias, with Theramenes, the moderate, trying to stop the violence, Critias struck his name off the citizenship list. They were doing that to a lot of people, taking away Athenian citizenship. And now Critias will sentence Theramenes to death as Theramenes held his poison drink. I don't have the goblet in my hand. I'll just use my water. Oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to drink it yet because Theramenes drank this poison hemlock. This is a way to execute people. But as he's drinking it, he played a game called Kotabos. Kotabos, he flicked the dregs of the poison onto the floor and toasted to the health of his executioner. So I don't know what that would be like. Kind of like spraying, but you're breaking the hemlock, you're flicking to the health of the executioner, and it's a final cold act of defiance. It's against the world that has completely gone insane. And what do you think is happening next? 404 BC, 30 Spartan tyrants rule Athens. Honestly, I was shocked the first time I learned that is the new government of Athens coming from the place that invented democracy. But even more surprising is what happens next in 403 BC, a group of Democrat-believing exiles led by Thucydides. They fought their way back into the city. They overthrew these tyrants. And long story short, Sparta, Athens, this is the best path forward. But challenges remained on the inside of Athens. Now, what challenges do you think this new power to the demos-led government, Democrat demos-led government, what are the problems now? What just happened? How do you live next door to a neighbor citizen? who actually helped the tyrants on their murderous reign of terror. Their political enemies were killed off. But most Athenians lived and tried to get along with the new Spartan government. So the decision was to prevent the never-ending cycle of revenge. Remember blood oaths. Back in Lesson 30, we talked about Athens had blood oaths. What is a blood oath? It's kind of that revenge. It's that the family generations are responsible to carry out the justice of the past wrongs. A blood oath style revenge would be devastating to an already devastated Athens. So now Athens is going to do something historic. And so they swore a solemn oath called the Amnesty. Have you heard this word amnesty? What even is amnesty? Well, it literally means not remembering. Not remembering. They made it illegal to bear malice, to prosecute, to harbor resentment against anyone for the crimes of war. History scholars, you're a classical scholar, this sounds familiar to you. But it should not sound like anything from before, because this is the first legal amnesty in history. Ancient Athens, after the Peloponnesian War, after Athens kind of regains their footing, Sparta still dominates, but it's kind of an attempt to start to stitch back that broken snake. It's almost been 100 years since dealing with the Persian threat. It's almost like Ben Franklin was there to guide them on a wise path. It's been almost 100 years. But while the laws forbade remembering, the hearts of the people could not forget. And this forced silence created a heavy shadow in the streets of Athens, because the anger doesn't disappear, it just looks for new targets that wasn't protected by the amnesty. Now, in the middle of all this news, the tension from the former golden boy, remember Alcibiades, who is off there somewhere in the Persian Empire now, the rogue Strategos. Remember, his title was Strategos. What is this Strategos? You know, it's the Greek title for general. I like the word strategy in there. Alcibiades was supposedly the best at strategy, right? He was a student of Socrates. He was the superstar. But after betraying Athens for Sparta, and then Sparta was betrayed for Persia, whether you call it luck that finally ran out or he had it coming, he was hiding in a small village in Phrygia. Phrygia. Where's Phrygia? If we check out this old map, these different regions, south of Bithynia, east of Lydia, the coins from Lesson 20, the Lydian coins. This is in the heart of the Persian Empire. There's quite a story there. Lesson 20 was economics, but now we're talking about Phrygia, where assassins set fire to the house of Alcibiades. And this time Socrates, this painting, Socrates was there to defend Alcibiades. He's not there this time, the favorite teacher of wisdom. Socrates is not there. Alcibiades ran out because his house is on fire with a sword drawn, a lone lion against a shower of arrows, and died in the dirt, 404 BC. So the news is back. I like this dramatic painting. It could have been the scene that these Athenians were picturing in their minds when they heard this news. The flames in the background of his heart, of his house, and the arrow in his heart. This is a charismatic, popular, traitor. He's gone. The people of Athens turned their eyes towards another famous figure, and that was the beloved Socrates. Not beloved everybody. Socrates was 70 years old at this point. He had stayed in the city during the reign of terror, during the 30 tyrants, during that period of executions. And even worse, his former students were the very men who had broken the city. Alcibiades the traitor and Critias the tyrant. But because of the amnesty, they couldn't charge Socrates for what? What did we say the amnesty was about? The war crimes. But they used the scroll, the ideas of Athens, of the classical goodness and what all that contained in the scroll. They rewrote some charges that would work, that the law would allow, because they charged him with corrupting the youth against the scroll, against the goodness, they charged him for impiety, corrupting the youth, impiety. What is impiety? What's being impious? We've talked about this before, about respecting the gods, respecting the Olympian gods, the traditions. Socrates really didn't believe in the Olympian gods. It did not make logical sense to him. And we'll get into that more in these coming lessons, what the philosophers were really seeing with these gods. And Socrates was corrupting the belief in Zeus. Didn't make sense. So this trial of Socrates was kind of a delayed aftershock of the war. It's a way for a broken city to convict its own conscience, kill off the bad Socrates. Was he really? Socrates told the jury that he was a gadfly sent by the gods to keep the city awake. What is gadfly? Landing on a horse, biting the horse, waking the horse up. The initial jury vote was 280 to 221 to convict. When Socrates was sentenced to die, he drank that hemlock as his final witness to the law. He believed we should follow the law. I'm not drinking hemlock. But he did, to show that he was a law-abiding citizen. And his final words were, "We owe a rooster to Asclepius." The son of Apollo, the god Asclepions, are the healing centers next to theaters. Asclepius helps people get better. And Socrates was saying that sickness and death is a way to heal from the life in a corrupt city. Ouch. Those are the final words. And a result of this series of events, the story of the broken snake, it shows us civilization, the human journey. You can have all the gold in the world, but wind up bankrupt. Athens had 9,700 talents of silver, a massive amount, but the sun casts a shadow into this golden age. It's not going to last, but something will. We've got several lessons coming ahead of us in this series. The classical carryover that's coming. We'll look to the philosophers Plato and Aristotle as we seek Aristotle's golden mean, trying to understand the balance. Like Alcibiades, could we be courageous without being so reckless? Could we be wise without being so arrogant like the Spartans? Can we prevent an empire built on stolen wealth and hubris, prevent itself from being poisoned from within, killing off its conscience, accusing its own self for its past sins? Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that's including your journey, some classical truth. Because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.